Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shauna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. I am introducing you to Nate today. Listen, Nathaniel Turner has done some amazing things, and we are going to hear all about it and his book. So, Nate, thank you for being here.
And thank you for considering me worthy of joining your show. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I love this show because, selfishly, it gives me the opportunity to meet some really incredible people. So I'm glad that you are here.
I hope I don't lower the bar, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. Not at all. So let's start with telling my audience a little bit about you.
About me. Past tense, present tense, future tense.
Oh, we're going to cover all of that.
How about that? Okay, well, I'm a guy that's originally from a little small town called Gary, Indiana. That's where I was born and raised. Left there as an 18-year-old and moved to Indianapolis and to go to college. Went to small school, Butler University. Stayed here, graduated, went to law school and graduate school. Said I would never come back to this town, and now I've been here since 1997. So I am a father and a husband. I say all the time, I have one wife and one son. If those relationships don't work out, I'm done. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. So I was instantly curious when you mentioned that you are a lawyer and that's your background, your profession, but you've written a book that is maybe some would think is a little different than that profession. And tell me if I got this wrong or right. Your book is called Journey Forward: How to Use Journaling to Envision and Manifest the Life You Always Wanted.
That's correct.
Well, so how did you go from being a lawyer to writing this book? Tell us about your journey to what was it about this story, this book, that needed to be told?
So the interesting thing, Sean, is the most significant things I think I've done in my life have come after becoming a father. So journaling is something I encourage my son to do. And I had the privilege of speaking to a group of future PhDs and master's students in science, technology, engineering, and math, and was sharing with them some of the strategies that I'd shared with my son along the way that allowed him to do some incredible things. And the student said to me, well, do you do them? And one of the things I mentioned was journaling. And they said, do you do that? And like all great hypocrites, I said proudly, no. And I decided that I should not be a hypocrite and that I should give it a try. And so I did. I started journaling, and it went terribly wrong because the way that I was journaling is the way that most people journal, which is to journal after the fact. We journal about something that happened, some event that we didn't like, some people who pissed us off. And I'm like, this is completely ineffective because all I'm doing is reliving the moments that I did not enjoy. So what I should do instead is journal forward. And from now on, I said, I'm going to journal about the life I want to live. I'm going to journal about how I want the day to go as opposed to the way it went previously. And that's what I do now.
So I think that I would agree with you in my journaling journey, if we would call it that. I started the same way. I've journaled my whole life, actually, and I would actually be able to say, no, I'm not a hypocrite. I actually tell everybody, yes, you should journal. And I also do almost daily journal. But I did the same thing in the beginning. I was writing about all the shit that went wrong and what I didn't like. And in some ways that can be helpful because you're processing through and maybe realizing how you could have handled a situation differently. However, it was much more beneficial for me to spend that time very intentionally thinking about where I want to go and what I want to happen and how I want to feel. And so that has been a really, I think, pivotal
Hmm.
shift for me in my own journaling. So I can agree with you on the journaling journey and kind of how it started and how we can pivot and shift to a different way of approaching it. So, what surprised you most about writing this book?
I'm surprised, first of all, that it's a book because it was never intended to be a book.
Hmm.
So when I returned and figured out that writing in this journal was working for me, there were some people who I know were asking me. First of all, said, "How are you writing books so fast? How are you doing the number of things that you're doing? Your disposition seems to be different. What are you doing?" And I was like, well, every day I've started to wake up. At the time, I was doing for the first 14 minutes. I said, I'm get up and I write for the first 14 minutes. I don't talk to anybody. In the first, whatever comes to my mind, that's what I write about. That I found out some things about brain science and that we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts. And generally about each day, 90% of those thoughts that we had yesterday, we repeat in a new day. And so if you didn't like what you got yesterday, more often than not, you're going to get what you didn't like yesterday today. So I'm like, well, I don't want that. So I'm gonna start writing my life the way I want it to be. And so that's how it came about. People that they were asking me to share these journals, and I started to share them. And I shared it with a friend of mine who happens to be a minister, and she said, "Hey, it reminds me of my daily bread that I read." Nate, sometimes you use some language that we don't say in church, but but it's still
Yeah.
the message is really kind of similar. You know what you should do? You should take them and turn them into action statements and write reflections and then share it in the book. And I said, absolutely not. If you want to do it, have
Yes.
at it. I said, you got a PhD. What have you ever written? I'm so sick and tired of all you people with all these daggone degrees and have not written a daggone thing. So write something. And so, be careful what you ask for because she came back and she had read
Yep.
and written action statements and reflections for 55 of them. And that's what became the book.
I love it. I love it. I also had a similar moment when I was having the realization that I was actually going to write this book, that I actually said, "Oh, absolutely not," the first time I heard the message that I needed to write a book about being divorced 3 times. I was like, "Oh, no, I am not writing that book." And then, fast forward, why, yes, yes, you are going to write that book.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
I love that these stories that are in us, the things we have to tell, that we have to share, will find their way out, um, regardless of how much we fight it along the way.
Yeah, in some ways, in some respect, I just these days I just don't fight um, because during the pandemic, when I read Will Smith's book before Will Smith banished himself from uh, from civility, when he banished himself from society, I should say. Um, I listened to his book, Will, and it was really well done. It was really unique to hear someone tell their own story in their own voice. And I thought, and so then folks that I know, my wife, my son, my friend Robin, who was the person, and others said, "Hey, it'd be really cool if you read your journal in your voice." And I'm like, "Nope, nope. Do I got time for all of that foolishness?"
Yeah,
Well, now, Shauna, it is an actual thing, and as of the first of the year, it's on all of the podcast channels. It's the Journal Forward audio cast. So
I
every three
love
times a
that.
week, you can hear me reading these journals with music in the background, and I have a friend named Dave who produces it all and edits it all. So yeah, it's a whole thing now, and it
That's
was never
amazing.
intended to be that.
It was never intended to be. Um, you know, my guest on the last show, I interviewed this man who his book became a series of books. So he was like, I was only ever wanting to write the one book. And then his publisher said, how about four of them? And he was like, I'm sorry, what? I mean, okay, I'll try. It's now becoming a video game. They're making his book into a video game. I just, I, I will never get tired of hearing these stories. We do the one little thing, we take the one step that feels ginormous, right? Like, okay,
Hmm.
fine, I'll write the book. And then it, like these things grow wings and then they just take us along for the ride. So now you're turning it into a whole series where people can hear you speaking. I love it.
It, it's a book. It's a it's not a podcast. We call it an audio cast. It is a course that we've now created called Mission 5126, where we use journaling as a part of that. Yeah, it's a whole big thing now.
Well, and the reason, as I believe, is that journaling is such a valuable tool that can change people's lives for the better. And so this is why it's, taking you along for the ride, because people need this tool and they need to, people need to hear it the way you're going to say it, the way you've written it, so that it can resonate with them, because, it lands differently for everybody. Anyways, I love this story so much. So, what do you think? Let me see. Where am I going from this? How do you think you've embraced this idea of starting again?
So it's interesting because when I believe in this thing called backward design, and so my start is the end. So I start with the end, and so every day feels like a new opportunity is what I write. Every day is an opportunity to be better today than you were yesterday. So every day is a chance in my mind to essentially start again. If you consider like a rebirth or a reawakening, each day is just that. When you arise, you are starting anew, and whatever happened yesterday, good or bad, triumph or tragedy, it's now a new opportunity to start again. So that's the way I look at each day. Is that as a start, a restart.
I mean, yes, well said. You're just mimicking everything I've said thus far on this show. We talk about start again moments here, but every day is that opportunity for you to choose different, to be better, to do better, and to not beat yourself up over what has already happened, or
Hmm.
how it didn't go right, quote unquote, right in the past. Um, but yeah, those start again moments. We talk about the real big ones on this show, but every day, those little moments where you can say, okay, hold on, deep breath, I can do this. Those are the ones that really matter, because that's the redirect,
Hmm.
the pivot, the shift towards, okay, I have control over this after all. I love that. Okay, so if you were to think of the younger you, go
Yeah.
back as far as you would like, what advice would you give him?
Um, the younger me. Um, I would probably give the same advice that I've been giving to my child, because in many ways
Mhm.
I've wanted him to be better than me, and thus, so I'd say to recognize primarily that life is a process, and to not get too high. These are not my words; these are not new. Not to get too low, but also tell him this: that along the process, to recognize that there'll be times when you climb the summit, and there'll be times when you're in the valley, and don't celebrate too much when you're high, and don't wallow too much when you're low. Just realize that without the highs and the lows, all the land would seem flat, and you would not enjoy a life that was
Mm.
flat.
It kind of reminds me of some of the advice I tell my children when, they're pointing out differences in people, or that kid's weird, or that person's going to think I'm weird. And I'm like, life would be really boring if we were all the same. And we need the ups and downs, the valleys, the peaks, the triumphs, the losses, to, make it more interesting at the end of the day. Most of us would like maybe fewer valleys, but Um, but, here we are.
That just means you're going to have more peaks.
Exactly.
If you have more valleys, you're going to have more
Exactly,
peaks.
exactly. No, but I
Right?
I love that, and, I don't know if your son heeds your advice. I have 4 children, and I love to give them advice all day long. Uh, they have to be in the, like, moment to accept it, whether or not it resonates, but I do think I've got some sage advice for them when and if they decide to listen.
So my son
That's
does listen.
amazing.
But here's the thing. So we were talking about like these all these little steps to get you to a certain place. The very first thing that I wrote and shared publicly was a book we called Raising Superman, which is a collection of letters that I wrote to my son from age 2 to 16. And what I learned, and the reason I started writing him is because he asked for mail. But what I learned from writing him was that writing him was perhaps the best way for me to communicate with him. He was not as much then now, but very emotional. Will look at your face, and you have children. They will look at your face and see the look on your face and judge how they think you're feeling and what that
Yep,
look is going to
yep.
mean. They might hear the inflection in your voice, and they judge by the inflection what it is that you're saying, and may or may not even listen to your words. And I thought, okay, if I write him, I can be really strategic about what it is I want to say. But moreover, I can write him something that if when he's 22, the message will mean as much, if not more, than it did when he was 2. If I write him when he's 5, it'll mean more, maybe when he's 35 or 45. So to write him things that could live on long beyond just what was happening in that moment.
Well, and I'm sure it will and has even now, but what an incredible gift to him to have your words to take with him.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. So I am giving him advice, and he tells me to publish the letters.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
He said, with going to Brazil, he decided he didn't want to return to high school for his senior year. And while we were in Brazil, he told me he wasn't sure he was going to be able to make it because my wife was. He never said that. My wife said, I don't know if he's going to be able to stay. And when I got back to the academy where he was, it's a long story. I won't bother you with the story, but I returned to the academy where he was, and I was expecting him to have his bags packed and ready to hop on a plane and come back to the United States. And he says, "Hey, Dad, wait, I got a question for you." I said, "What?" He said, "You put the letters in any particular order?" Because I put some of the letters I wrote him in a binder to leave with him. He's going to be 7,000 miles away. He's not taking advice from me in person, and I'm not calling him 7,000 miles in Brazil. And he says, I reread the first 3 letters. I remember my purpose and I'm going to be fine. But here's what I want to do. Whenever I return, I want us to publish these letters and share them with other folks. Because, Dad, when you tell me something is supposed to happen, not only do I believe it's supposed to happen, I know it's going to. And so other families should have access to this. So when he returned, about 14 months later, he had a concussion, and that was the end of his soccer career. He did all the work and found everybody to get the letters
Oh
published.
my goodness.
So without that, I would not be talking to you today because he's the one that it told me to publish something.
I I just love these young people in our lives and how I don't know about you, but I feel like my children teach me more than I teach them on some days.
Yeah, well, they should, right? Because
Yeah,
they're going through life at a different perspective than you are, so there is still something for us to learn. I would agree completely.
for sure, for sure. Well, so when you're looking forward and kind of manifesting for your own life, what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
Um, what I believe is possible and what I want to be possible may be slightly different. What I'm most interested in is that when my time on this planet is up, the thing that matters to me most is that I get to be in eternity who I wanted to be while I was here in the flesh. And that's the most important thing to me. So each day when I write, if I have a bad day, you said something earlier. You said, "Hey, journaling can be good if you have something bad happen to sort of strategically know how not to happen again." But the thing, and I agree, The thing I do is if I have a bad day, if something is bothering me, I write about how I got beyond that time. So I'm writing in the future, like, hey, remember once upon a time you were bothered by this kind of stuff? Thank God you're not bothered by that anymore. Like you wouldn't have gotten to where you are now if you hadn't. And so I do that.
Yeah.
What I'm most interested in is I write daily about I want to be in excellent health. I want to have abundant wealth, which is not the same as being as what most people think about wealth. And I want to be a person who receives and is able to share timeless wisdom that enhances other people's lives. I want to help serve and make sure other people know that their lives matter. And that's kind of the sum of what it is that I want to do for the remainder of my life. How that plays out, I guess it plays out differently for people. Yep.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, I love
Yep.
that. And I think um, that's probably the wisest approach to manifesting a life you love, right? Focused on
Mhm.
what you're wanting to give the essence of who you want to be, how you want to feel. It's not about the stuff, obviously, but I think a lot of us get distracted with the stuff. Um, no, I love
Mhm.
that. I love that. Very well said. Very well said. Well, I guess one of my very last questions for you, which I hope this isn't too short of an episode. How can people find you and your book and all of the things that you have done and created?
Yeah. Uh, Pretty simple. You can find me on our website, which is nathanielaturner.com. So that's NathanielAturner.com. And our books are sold where all books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, etc.
Well, I love it. And I so appreciate your time and also your patience with the technology little hiccups today. But it was a pleasure to speak with you. It was nice to meet you.
Mine too. And the hiccups were our test.
Yeah, we
Right? It
passed.
was our test. If we're going to be who we say we are, am I going to be mad about technology hiccup? No, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I love it and I am so appreciative. I cannot wait to read your book and I hope all of my audience goes out and snags a copy for themselves. Well, hey, thanks for listening today and thank you for your reviews. They mean so much to me and they help this podcast grow. I just love reading them. So if you haven't left one yet, please do. Now, listener, are you having your own start again moment? Your path to thriving after divorce is here. The future may be uncertain, but there is hope. We know that losing your identity as a wife can be disheartening, and the grief that follows is humbling. In fact, it can feel crippling. But if you are ready to get back on your feet, download my Start Again guide to get you pointed in the right direction. You can find it at shaunalee.com/startagain.